Sometimes a dog stretches when he wakes up. That part seems obvious. Muscles loosen. The body resets. But sometimes your dog stretches only when he sees you. Not after sleep. Not after rest. But at the exact moment you appear. And that changes everything. This movement looks casual. Almost meaningless. So common that most people don't even register it. But this stretch is not about flexibility. It's not about comfort. And it's definitely not random. It's a silent behavior. One that lives at the edge of emotion, memory, and nervous system regulation. Dogs don't stretch like this to show off their bodies. They do it to reset something internal, something emotional, something relational. And the reason it happens when they see you has far more to do with connection than with movement. Most owners assume it's coincidence, a timing overlap, a habit. But dogs don't waste energy on meaningless gestures. Every repeated movement has a purpose, especially one that appears at moments of emotional significance. And seeing you is one of the most emotionally charged moments in your dog's day. In this video, we're going to slow this behavior down, frame by frame, layer by layer, to understand what your dog is actually doing when he stretches in front of you. Because once you see it clearly, you'll never interpret that moment the same way again. The nervous system reset. When your dog sees you, his nervous system reacts before his conscious mind does. There's a brief internal surge, a spike of emotional activation. Not excitement in the human sense, but arousal, the body preparing to respond. Dogs live in a constant dance between two systems, one that mobilizes and one that calms. Seeing you often activates both at once. On one level, there's recognition, safety, attachment. On another, there's anticipation, movement, change. That combination creates tension. Not bad tension, but stored energy. And the stretch is how the body releases it without escalating into anxiety or overexcitement. This is not conscious. Your dog is not deciding to stretch. The body simply knows what to do to stay balanced. Stretching activates lung muscle chains, slows breathing, and sends calming feedback to the brain. It's a physical action with a neurological purpose. In simple terms, your dog is regulating himself in response to your presence. Not because you stress him, but because you matter. This is why the stretch often happens right after eye contact, before jumping, before tail wagging, before movement. It's the pause before engagement, a way of saying, internally, I'm ready now, and dogs who feel secure don't rush that transition. They smooth it silently. Why this is not a physical stretch? If this were about muscles, the timing would be different. Physical stretches happen after rest, after sleep, after long periods of stillness. But this behavior appears on cue. You enter the room. You open the door. You become visible. And the stretch appears instantly. That timing tells us everything. The body isn't responding to stiffness. It's responding to meaning. Dogs are exquisitely sensitive to shifts in emotional context. Your arrival changes the emotional climate of the space. Energy shifts. Attention focuses. And the dog's body adjusts accordingly. This stretch is not about lengthening muscle fibers. It's about downshifting arousal. Without it, excitement could spike too fast, leading to jumping, vocalization, restlessness. The stretch acts as a buffer, a soft landing. It allows your dog to greet you without overwhelming himself. That's why dogs who lack emotional regulation often skip this behavior entirely. They explode instead. The stretch is not a sign of excess energy. It's a sign of control, of internal balance. And here's the part most people miss. Dogs don't do this for strangers. They do it for people who carry emotional weight. The stretch only appears when the relationship is established, which means the behavior is not about the body at all. It's about the bond. A signal of emotional safety. Dogs don't stretch like this when they feel unsure. They don't do it when they're guarding, when they're tense, when they're alert to danger. This behavior only appears when the dog feels safe enough to soften. That's the key. Stretching exposes the body, the neck, the belly, the balance. In the animal world, those are vulnerable positions. A dog would never choose them in the presence of uncertainty. So when your dog stretches after seeing you, he's not just regulating himself. He's communicating something quietly. I don't need to stay braced. Your presence allows the body to let go of readiness. That's not obedience. That's trust. This is why the stretch often looks slow, deliberate, almost exaggerated. There's no rush, because the nervous system feels it has time. And dogs who don't feel emotionally safe don't slow down. They stay tight, reactive, hyper-focused. This stretch is the opposite of that state. It's a release that says, the environment just became predictable, and you are the reason. Emotional co-regulation. Dogs don't regulate emotions alone. They regulate with someone. This is something humans often misunderstand. We think emotional regulation is internal, a solo process. For dogs, it's relational. Your dog's nervous system is constantly tuning itself to the nervous systems around him. Your tone, your posture, your pace, your emotional state. All of it is information. When you enter a space, your dog reads you instantly, not logically, physiologically. And if your presence feels familiar, predictable, and safe, his body responds by aligning with you. The stretch is part of that alignment. It's not just self-regulation. It's co-regulation, a shared emotional rhythm. Your dog is saying, without words, I can settle because you're here. This is why the stretch often mirrors a deeper exhale, a softening of the eyes, a relaxed tail. The body is sensing. And here's the subtle part. Dogs who live with chronically stressed humans often stretch more, not less. Not because they're stressed themselves, but because they're constantly adjusting, helping stabilize the emotional environment. It's quiet, invisible, and deeply relational. Your dog isn't just greeting you. He's recalibrating the emotional field you both exist in, together. When the stretch disappears, the absence of a behavior can be just as meaningful as its presence. Some dogs stop stretching like this. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It just fades. Owners often don't notice, because nothing looks wrong, but internally, something has shifted. This stretch depends on one thing above all: emotional ease. When a dog feels conflicted, unsure, overstimulated, or emotionally compressed, the body doesn't soften. It braces, even in familiar environments, even with familiar people. The stretch disappears because the nervous system stays alert, not fearful, just guarded. This doesn't mean the bond is broken. It means the dog no longer feels room to fully reset in that moment. Changes in routine, in household energy, in emotional availability. All of these can affect the behavior. Dogs don't protest. They adapt, and adaptation often looks like stillness. That's why paying attention to small, silent behaviors matters so much. They shift long before overt problems appear. The stretch is not something to demand or train or correct. It's something to observe. Because when it's there, it tells you the relationship is flowing. When it's gone, it's a quiet invitation to slow down and listen. The meaning you almost missed. What looks like a simple stretch is anything but simple. It's not a habit, not a reflex, not coincidence. It's a quiet conversation happening below words. Your dog isn't loosening muscles. He's loosening his state, letting go of readiness, letting go of tension, letting go of uncertainty. Because you arrived. That moment matters more than we realize. Dogs don't perform emotional gestures for attention. They do them because the body knows what the mind doesn't need to explain. And when a dog stretches after seeing you, he's saying something very specific. This is a safe place to land. It doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean absence of stress. It means presence. It means your nervous systems have learned how to meet without friction. And that's not something you train. It's something you build through consistency, tone, patience, and time. So the next time your dog stretches when you walk into the room, don't rush past it. Notice how your own body feels. Notice your breathing. Notice the shift. Because regulation is contagious. And sometimes your dog is the one teaching you how to slow down first. If this changed the way you see your dog, leave a like. It helps this message reach more people. Subscribe if you want to understand the silent behaviors animals use to communicate what they feel but can't say. And in the comments, tell us, has your dog ever done this when you arrived? Thank you for spending this time with us.